The task force on Medical Cannabis Therapeutic Research met for the second time. Members received an overview on the science behind medical cannabis and the implementation of the program in Minnesota. Senator Dibble, as co-chair of this task force, what would you consider the greatest or most relevant takeaway from today's hearing?
Well, we learned an awful lot about the utility and efficacy of cannabis as medicine. We heard some of the interesting research that's going on at the University of Minnesota, particularly around pain as it relates to sickle cell anemia, cancer, and some other conditions. I think it was interesting to hear about the process by which the researcher had to go to establish a clinical study. Her assessment that it takes many years to get to the point that they're at now. That's frustrating. She wouldn't recommend that any young researchers go into this field because they're trying to get their careers launched, and you get stymied for 4 years. That's not really a good way to launch your career. So it was interesting to hear both about the potential and the possibilities, as well as the quandary that we're in, trying to provide access to medical marijuana in forms that work really well for folks. Tracking the benefits and what doesn't work, and in what forms and what amounts for what conditions, and then having that go back perhaps and inform more and better clinical trials, and maybe create a larger conversation state to state, states to the federal government, about really getting some of this good research done. And then I think it was useful to hear an update from the agency about the status of implementing the provisions of the law that we passed. They've taken on a tremendous amount of work that has to be accomplished in a short amount of time. I'm very impressed with how much they have done. Now we're in the stage of actively taking applications from potential manufacturers, establishing a process to evaluate those applications. At the same time, on a parallel track, writing the rules around which manufacturers and the programs need to abide. The manufacturers, how they grow, how they manufacture, how they distribute, and then setting up this distribution mechanism and the means by which patients gain access to the forms that they need in conjunction with their healthcare providers, and then the patient observational program that needs to be set up as well.
Senator, the task force is obviously early in its work, but judging just from these first couple of meetings, how much do you think the legislature is going to have to do next session to revise, refine, reform the law that was already passed?
I think it remains to be seen whether or not we're going to have to update the law. I think in the coming session, we may do some fairly minor adjustments. I think there's an interest in seeing how well what we've come to is a compromise. I have the view that more patients should be able to gain access to more forms of cannabis to treat the conditions that it's shown to be beneficial for. But this was a compromise. It was hard fought and hard won, difficult to come to. So let's establish the program, see how well it works, and evaluate that. And the task force task is to evaluate how well the law is being implemented. Keep in mind, it won't even be in effect when we're in session next year. It won't go into full effect until July 1st. People won't even have access to the medicine until July 1st. So we won't even know a whole lot by this time next year. So maybe over the course of 2015, we'll know a lot more and be ready to have some more conversations about other policy changes, other approaches in 2016.